Hello and welcome back to the channel. What I got for you today is my updated tier list for all of the Deadlock heroes after the recent patch on October 10th and October 11th. And of course, if you're new here or find yourself coming back on the regular and you aren't already subscribed, why not? You're coming back anyways, as we're going for the huge goal of 10,000 subscribers by the end of November. But anyways, I hope you sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. Now we're actually going to be starting with our D tier. For our D tier, I'm actually going to sadly put Great Talon in our D tier, as he's recently had a ton of nerfs and is just not as good as he was before. In the most recent patch, you can see they changed a lot. The arrow cycle time increased from 0.45 to 0.55. However, his fire rate no longer scales with spirit power. His base bullet damage now scales with spirit power with 0.1. Great Talon's move speed no longer scales with spirit power. It's just a lot of changing him, making him less optimal in the higher MMR lobbies. And sadly, there's just way better characters to pick from instead of playing Great Talon. Although I love this character with all my heart, I might be having to put him away for a while. Moving on to our C tier list, we're going to be placing Vindicta in our C tier. Again, Vindicta has received a lot of changes and a lot of nerfs, but most importantly, her souls that she gets with her sniper or her assassinate ability are now unsecured, so all those souls you work so hard to get can be lost within a matter of seconds. She does not do a lot of damage than what she used to do. After this patch, I've been playing her a lot over on my stream, go check that out. But what I've noticed is that she's really lacking in the damage department now. But of course, this is all just in my opinion. As you can see, she got a whole list of changes. Her damage fall off was increased from 58 meters to 64, which you can see kind of as a buff. However, her bullet damage growth per boon was reduced. Flight duration no longer scales with spirit power. Her flight bonus move speed above base now scales at 50% effectiveness, so she doesn't move around in the air as fast, which I actually like, but this is just nerfing her more. Vindicta's health growth per boon was also decreased, so that's another nerf to her. Her gun cycle time was increased. Her stake duration was reduced from 2 seconds to 1.75. Again, her assassinate bonuses are now unsecured. Her flight acceleration was decreased, and the Krill familiar percent damage no longer affects the mid boss. So definitely a lot of changes, making her a little less undesirable. Although you can play her and still do well, it'll probably take a little bit to get used to. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Now we're actually going to be choosing Mirage for our next character. We're going to be putting him in the C tier as well. Now, yes, when he first came out on September 26, he was extremely strong, doing a ton of damage, but that is no longer the case. He was instantly hotfixed like the day after, so the 27th of September, and since then he's been getting weaker and weaker with all the changes. Now, yes, he can still do a ton of damage, but that is no longer the case. How I see it, he's pretty weak. He's only really super useful with his tornado with the Echo Shard build, so that's why I'm putting him at the C tier. As you can see the changes, Tornado now uses a range for its travel distance instead of travel duration. Mirage's Mark's base damage has been reduced from 16 to 12, which is a pretty major reduction. The Mark scaling from spirit power was increased because of that. They also changed the CDs on his ultimate ability, or just flipping them around. So again, he's definitely not what he used to be. This is all coming someone from a higher MMR standpoint, and I don't see him being picked as much anymore, so that's why I'm placing him in C tier. Of course, you can have a different opinion, and that's perfectly fine. Again, do let me know what you think in the comments. Now, when it comes to Bebop, he's also recently got a ton of nerfs, making him a lot less desirable of a pick, but he can still kind of hold his own, so we're going to be putting him in the middle of the pack at the B tier. You can say yes, he's great at getting opening picks, or just catching people off guard, but besides that, if you miss the hook, he's kind of just a sitting duck now. As for the recent changes, Bebop no longer has a cap. They did have it at 15 on the October 10th patch, but they quickly changed that as that was a little not fair, as he wasn't scaling properly with the rest of his team and enemies. Then the sticky bomb scaling per hero was reduced from 4 to 3. You now lose 2 stacks on death, so you actually have to start thinking a little bit more when you're playing Bebop with positioning and everything. And in my eyes, he's just struggling with power in comparison to all the other characters in this game. But again, let me know your opinion in the comments below. Next up, we have the man with the funny hat, or 7, and we also are going to be putting him at the middle of the pack at the B tier. Now, he also received a ton of nerfs dating all the way back to the 12th of September, and as the meta changes and the items that he uses gets nerfed, he no longer does the amount of damage that he used to do. So this was the change all the way back on the 12th of September. 7's base bullet resist reduced from 8% to 0%. His bullet resist no longer scales with boons. 7's storm cloud damage reduced from 124 to 110. The storm cloud max radius reduced from 30 meters to 25. And there's definitely more patch notes we can go back and look through. It's just he's just not as desirable as he once was. Now, although she used to be decently strong, we're placing Lady Geist also at the middle of the pack at B tier. Although she received a few changes, to me these changes felt like enough to bring her power scaling and just power in general down, so that's why I'm placing her in the B tier. A couple changes to note is that they fixed a bug that could cause some units to take more damage than intended with the Essence Bomb. Her life drain can now be alternate casted on allied heroes, so you can suck off your friends. And probably the two big things is Malice slow duration reduced from 6 seconds to 4, and then the Malice amp duration reduced from 16 to 13 seconds. Although these changes might look minor to some people's eyes, this is a decently sized change to her that definitely affects her damage output. We then have our TF2 engineer McGinnis. She's also going to be going to the middle of the pack at the B tier. She was recently hit with a barrage of nerfs, definitely making her less oppressive in lane and just generally doing a lot less damage now. Now these were just some of the changes done. If you want to see the full changes, make sure to check out my patch notes video. But McGinnis no longer has the plus 25% spirit power. She now has 15% bullet resist. The tier 1 upgrade for the mini turrets no longer grants her +1 charge. The mini turrets duration was reduced. The mini turrets health scaling was reduced from 30 to 20, and the mini turrets recharge time was also reduced from 5 to 3. The first one is a nerf, the second one is a buff, but overall she's just a little lacking in the damage department now, making her still not one of the best picks, but you can definitely cause some chaos by solo pushing lanes. Sadly, another character we're putting in the B tier is gonna be Yamato. Yamato, as well as many other characters, received some nerfs, making her not as strong as she used to be, and she's no longer super oppressive in lane. Some of the major changes done was power slash cooldown increased from 8.5 seconds to 10.5, which is a crazy amount for one of her primary abilities. The shadow transformation no longer grants you bullet and spirit resist, and the shadow transformation duration reduced from 4.5 seconds to 4 seconds. That's when she's in her ultimate form. So basically, she takes more damage in her shadow transformation, and she's in there for a lot less, so you can get damage onto her faster. Now for our next character on our list, I was really debating whether I should keep him in A or B. Now with the recent nerfs to Lash, I actually decided to drop him down a tier, that ultimately being the B tier. Now the changes that were done to ultimately change my decision was that Lash's base bullet damage was reduced from 10 to 9, the flog heal versus heroes was reduced from 80 to 70%, and the flog heal versus creeps was reduced from 30 to 25%. He no longer has a ton of lifesteal and doesn't do as much damage as he once did. I still think he can do an incredible amount of damage in the right hands, but for a majority of the players, I don't think he's going to do as much damage as he once did. Now, although receiving a buff, I'm going to be placing Warden in the B tier. I think yes, he can still do a ton of damage. I think he can be a really good supportive character. I just feel like the general consensus is that he lacks damage in the early game, making him pretty punishable. I would say most of the time, about 95% when I'm facing a Warden in lane, I usually win. Very rarely do I lose to a Warden, and I also feel that he's a super punishable character. The changes that were done was Warden's Alchemic Flask cooldown reduced from 14 to 12 seconds, Alchemic Flask damage increased from 55 to 65, Alchemic Flask tier 1 now has +1 stamina reduction, Alchemic Flask tier 2 is now +50 damage, last stand channel duration reduced from 2.2 seconds to 2, and the last stand range increased from 12 meters to 13. Now yes, this is all buffs to the character, but I still don't think it's enough to push him over the edge to the A tier. Now yes, you can agree or disagree, but let me know what you think down in the comments below. And quickly before you move on, do me a favor, hit that like and subscribe button, it greatly helps me out. Now I honestly sat here deliberating where I should put Wraith. I want to put her between A and B, but there's no really category between those two, so I'm just going to be putting her in the middle of the pack at B, but I think she still does a ton of damage. Even though yes, they did nerf her spirit power scaling and spirit damage in general a ton, like I said in a ton of my previous videos, the spirit power isn't the problem with Wraith, it's the gun damage. She does a ton of gun damage if built correctly, and she's a character, if used in the right hands, can quickly and easily take over any game. Now the few and little changes they did with her was that the card trick spirit scaling reduced from 1.2 to 1.1, and the card trick regeneration via melee was reduced by 50%. So honestly, not a lot of changes. If you really want to nerf Wraith, all you really have to do is nerf the base damage of her gun, and that's really it. For our first character on the A tier list, it's actually going to be Krill. Krill, as of recently, has been getting a lot of buffs, making him a super useful and team-oriented character that even if the player that's playing when Krill goes say 0-20, you can still be super useful to the team just by ulting one person. Just to make this character more annoying, Bo and Krill's ultimate ability combo tier 1 now grants plus 30% bullet resist, while channeling no longer grants minus 28 CD, making him a whole lot tankier when ulting someone. His ultimate ability combo cooldown was also reduced from 95 seconds to 75, which is an insane change. It's probably to the point that you can almost ult anyone in every single team fight you do right away, or you'll pretty much have it ready whenever. Next up, we still have probably one of the best supports in the entire game, Kelvin. Now, although the Kelvin was nerfed on the 26th of September, with the headshot bonus damage reduced by 20%, bullet damage growth reduction from 1.2 to 0.9, the Arctic beam movement slow reduced from 70% to 50%, his slow from the bomb and his beam still stack on each other, so he still does an insane amount of slow. And again, it's just an all-around really great support character to play. It can still be oppressive and annoying in lane. Next up, we have our green goo friend Viscous, and I'm going to be placing him on the A tier as well. Viscous is still a super oppressive laner and has the potential to do a ton of burst damage, while still being able to have a ton of impact as a support style character. Viscous also kind of received a buff in a way. The cube cleanse is now part of the tier 2. The puddle punch enemy warning time increased from 0.35 seconds to 0.45, so you can kind of see that of a nerf in a way. Viscous can now use down dash during goo ball, which is really good, and the splatter post cast delay was reduced, making him still a very strong option. Next up, we have Shiv. Again, he's still a super strong character, and I still can't believe after being nerfed at least 4 times, he's still one of the best characters in the entire game. The recent change they did was Shiv's slice and dice damage tier 2 reduced from 85 to 75, killing blow rage buildup per spirit damage reduced from 0.02 to 0.013, the killing blow rage drain rate increased from 0.3 to 0.35, Shiv's killing blow full rage bonus damage reduced from 20% to 15%, then the killing blow tier 2 increased from 5% to 10%. Now yes, this is a nerf, but he's still really good, so there's really no reason not to play him. Q Metallica. Next up, we have Haze or the Sandman. We're placing Haze in tier A, as she honestly just got a buff recently for whatever reason, making her a whole lot stronger. Again, she's a super snowbally type hero and a very excellent late game character. Haze's fixation max dex increased from 30 to 40, fixation tier 3 reduced from 0.2 to plus 0.15. One of the major things is Haze's bullet dance base ability now grants 2 targets hit per shot. Bullet dance base ability no longer grants plus 25 evasion. However, on tier 3 you now get 40% evasion and plus 2 bullet dance speed, which is insane. Just generally making Haze a whole lot stronger. Next up, we have Infernus, again getting placed in tier A. He's still a super strong character that I still can't believe they really haven't even touched. His afterburn still does a lot of damage, and yes, you can buy debuff remover and reducer to counter the effects of afterburn, but it's still a thing you have to consider. He also received a buff from the October 10th patch. Well, even though his catalyst damage amp reduced from 25% to 20%, his catalyst tier 3 damage amp was increased from 50% to 20%, so making this character a very strong initiator and just general damage dealer. Next up, we have Paradox. I think she's doing extremely well in this current meta and latest patch, so we're placing her in the A tier. Now, in the right hands, Paradox can be very dominant, and there's no reason why we shouldn't be placing her in the A tier. Now, in the latest patch, her changes were pretty extensive. Her bullet growth per boon was increased from 0.33 to 0.45, the time wall bullet duration reduced from 1 second to 0.7 seconds, the paradoxal swap cooldown was increased, the paradoxal swap range was reduced from 30 meters to 25, the tier 1 for the swap reduces the cooldown by 15, tier 3 now increases the range by 20 meters, the pulse grenade radius was reduced, however the pulse grenade damage amp per sec was increased from 5 to 6%, and the tier 3 now also increases the radius by 1 meter per pulse. And just the amount of initiation and pressure that a Paradox player can have on a game definitely lets her have a well-deserved tier A spot, at least in my list. Next up, we have our flying friend Ivy. We're also going to be placing Ivy in our tier A slot. She is still a very strong character, especially with the Kuzu Mines buff that they did a couple patches ago in the nerf. However, I feel she wasn't nerfed a ton, and she can still be very dominant with those mines. She has a lot of mobility, and she can be a super supportive teammate
The recent changes done to her was Ivy improved default camera position, and take flight control keys are now similar to Vindicta, making her easier to control. Now honestly I wouldn't mind seeing more changes done to her, but that's just me. But anyways, that concludes my A tier list. Now let's move on to the S tier. For the first S tier character, we're actually gonna have Dynamo. Although Dynamo is kind of nerfed in the recent patch. I mean, it wasn't a major nerf, but a kind of a nerf. I still believe Dynamo is a very good supportive character, a very good tank, and an amazing initiator, especially with his ultimate and the refresher item. There's always this statement I say when I'm playing some matches is, man, I wish I had a Dynamo on my team, because there's just so much use for his kit in the early, middle, and late game. You want a character that knocks people up, teleports you and your team, and even heals all of you. And don't forget, it has an amazing team fight ultimate, and well, Dynamo is basically the jack of all trades, and that's why he sits at the S tier spot, at least for me. The next character on the list, you could probably guess it, it's Abrams. Abrams is still a super, and is all around still super dominant. Yes, there is a lot of counters you can do to him, but a really good Abrams player, not even necessarily a really good Abrams player, but just a super fed Abrams player can pretty much take control of the entire game, to the point where you barely do any damage to them, but they will still one-tap you. So it's safe to say that Abrams is still a S tier character. Rounding out our tier list and our final spot is Pocket. Pocket, although nerfed to where his affliction doesn't hit people through walls and some of his damage is just reduced in general, most of the time if you're playing Pocket, you should have the most damage in the game and by a large margin. To the fast mobility, the quick burst damage, and the affliction, there's pretty much no reason why he should not be on the S tier. And of course, if you're new here or find yourself coming back on the regular and you aren't already subscribed, why not? You're coming back anyways. That was my updated tier list for all the characters in Deadlock for the month of October. But anyways, I hope you have a great day, and I'll catch you in the next one.